Some of the harder lessons that were learned was really around distribution. Distributing on Amazon, Google Play, like those types of digital platforms. It was great because I think that a lot of people see, especially from the independent community, a lot of people see value in being able to, distribute on their own. Like my film is available. Like you can check it out right now and go to this digital platform.
Greetings and welcome. Thank you for being here and thank you for tuning in. For anyone new here, I run Rap Consulting, and I've spent 13 years in film and finance, working across more than $200 million in founder-led projects, so most of what I cover comes straight out of that work.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
So, what is distribution? No, really, what does that mean? What does it mean now in 2026, and what did it mean 50 years ago in 1976? The Google definition of distribution in 2026 means, and I quote, the sale, licensing, placement, release, and monetization of a finished film across specific territories, windows, and platforms, with the only meaningful distinction being whether the distributor is actually spending, booking, promoting, or merely accepting, end quote. 50 years ago, the definition of distribution meant, and I quote, licensing and controlling access to a film through scarce sequential channels led by theaters and later television, where the distributor's power came from controlling when and where the public see it, end quote. So that would mean that distribution is the name of the game.
Whoa. Here I come. Oh, here I come. Oh.
Right? That is at least what has been sold as the most important part of a package since, well, the dawn of filmmaking. You make the film, then you sell the film to a distributor, and people will watch it. That, unfortunately, reveals the most untimely truth in that independent media distribution is broken and it has never been more obvious. A film can have all the generic bells and whistles. It can have an attached cast, a sales agent, festival coverage, maybe dozens of producer credits, and your film could even be completed. And yet it can still sit at the market for months, even years, with no buyer. So understand that distribution is controlling the path that makes a specific viewer choose this movie at a specific time on a specific platform or in a specific place. Everyone wants distribution because they think it means market validation. In 2026, the word is almost meaningless until you know the rights, window, territory, platform, spend, term, reporting, and who is actually pushing the release. So where are we now? The old windowing system was not perfect, but it had one major advantage in that every window had a defined economic purpose. Theatrical created public value, home video monetized demand after theaters, pay-per-view and video on demand captured rental behavior, premium cable paid license fees, network TV extended long-tail value. Each step had a reason, a buyer, and gave the filmmaker another chance to earn. That system rewarded films that could move through tiers. Theaters gave the film status, DVD gave it volume, cable gave it library value, and TV gave it repeat exposure. The film had a path, but as in past tense. Today, that path is fractured because the current system is less sequential and more chaotic. The old 90 to 120 day theatrical window has largely been replaced by a shorter, flexible theatrical window. A major current fight is around the 45-day theatrical window, with industry concerned that going shorter can damage theatrical revenue before the film has fully played out. Universal has already moved toward a 45-day exclusive theatrical window for its 2027 releases, which tells you the industry is still trying to repair the damage caused by the streaming free-for-all. The shitbirds at Netflix, while trying to pull a fast one during their bid for Warner Media, doubled down on the streaming-first model just recently when film chairman Dan Lin told the commies at the New York Times that there is a group of filmmakers who still want theatrical, and those filmmakers Netflix has accepted it just won't work with. Which is particularly rich because back on February 3rd, co-CEO Ted Sarandos sat in front of a Senate antitrust subcommittee and pledged a 45-day theatrical window for Warner Media if Netflix's merger went through. He called it a blood oath. Then when Senator Spartacus pressed him on whether that window was actually exclusive, Sarandos admitted the window moves for movies that underperform, and he pointed to James Gunn's Superman by James Gunn as a film that got a shorter run for underperforming. Wouldn't you know?
I told you so.
That promise was tied to Netflix's $83 billion bid to acquire Warner Media, a bid that collapsed just a few weeks later when Netflix declined to match Paramount's higher offer. So however you feel about streaming, understand that it weakened the value of several older windows. It trained audiences to wait. It trained buyers to discount films. It trained filmmakers to confuse placement with success. It trained everyone to pretend available everywhere is the same as wanted anywhere, or making access cheaper and attention harder. And the biggest difference is that old distribution sold scarcity. The film was only in theaters, then it was on VHS DVD, then only on cable, then only on TV. Each move created a new transaction. Current distribution sells access and the film lands somewhere. Then maybe it gets promoted or not. That is the difference. Old distribution created economic steps. Modern distribution often creates a digital parking space. The ugly independent reality for independent filmmakers is that the word distribution has been abused into near meaninglessness. A movie can technically be distributed and still be invisible, unpaid, unsupported, buried, and financially dead. It used to be where a film's value was harvested. Now it often reveals whether the film had any value in the first place. That is brutal, but accurate, because if there is no audience before release, distribution will not magically create one. It may amplify demand, it may convert demand, it may even package demand, but it does not usually invent demand from nothing. The reality is that distributors spend when they believe there is something worth spending behind, and for most indies, there is not enough evidence up front anymore. Not enough audience data, no genre proof outside obscure horror, which is already an oversaturated market. No more cast value, no press angle, no social conversion, no comparable release path, no buyer urgency, no reason for anybody to care. That is where filmmakers get obliterated. Which now brings us to the streaming lie. Streaming made filmmakers think the gate was open when it was not. The gate moved. There is no gate.
The arrangement is changing. Was changed. As a matter of fact, there is no arrangement.
Being on a streaming platform does not mean the platform is actually pushing the film. DEG, or the Digital Entertainment Group, reported that US subscription streaming passed $57 billion in 2025 and made up 92% of the US consumer spending on home entertainment, which just goes to show where consumer money moved to. It does not mean individual independent films are getting rich from that shift, and that distinction matters. Streaming platforms can be enormous, while your film earns nothing. Both can be true. Annoying, yes, also the reality. And nowhere is this reality more brutal than Tubi. Tubi is the purest form of this illusion. It boasts over 100 million monthly active users and runs entirely on advertising, a free service that turned profitable for Fox in 2025. Yet the independent filmmaker is left starving. When a distributor tells you your movie sold to Tubi, they are using a corporate euphemism. You didn't sell anything. You placed your film on an algorithmic clearance rack. And I know what you're going to say. But Sean, Tubi partnered with Kickstarter in a landmark deal to fund, distribute, and stream independent films. Blah, 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 my ass. The harsh mechanics of how Tubi specifically turns your film into a $0 asset break down into distinct traps. Tubi operates on an infinite digital shelf of over 300,000 titles. And because hosting digital files costs them next to nothing, their business model relies on hoarding content, not promoting it. Your movie is technically live and available to millions, but without a massive external marketing push, it is functionally invisible. Tubi's algorithm also heavily favors its own Tubi originals and multi-season TV series over standalone independent features. If the algorithm doesn't feed your film to the users in the first 72 hours, it gets buried under tens of thousands of older titles. They pay on a strict revenue share model tied directly to ad impressions, or CPM. You do not get paid for a stream, but instead get paid when an audience member sits through a commercial break.
You're not you when you're hungry. Snickers, get some nuts.
On average, payouts translate to a fraction of a cent per view. Independent data shows that it takes roughly 1 million ad views just to generate around $5,200 in total revenue. If a viewer clicks your thumbnail, watches for 3 minutes, and closes the app because an ad interrupted their flow, your payout for that session is exactly $0 and 0 cents.
Whoa, I think I just figured something out, Beavis. What? This sucks. Yeah, it really sucks. This sucks more than anything that has ever sucked before.
Whatever tiny fractions of a cent your film manages to squeeze out of those ad breaks must pass through multiple corporate hands before even reaching your own bank account. And because independent filmmakers cannot upload directly to Tubi, you must go through an aggregator or a distributor. Aggregators take 15 to 30% off the top as a category, and Film Hub, the one most indies use, take a flat 20% before you ever see a dime. So if you sign with a traditional indie distributor rather than a self-service aggregator, they will deduct their own marketing and administrative expenses first. The grand irony of the streaming shift is that Tubi is wildly profitable for Fox, while being a financial graveyard for the people making the movies. The platform makes billions selling ad space against a wall of free content, while the filmmakers who spent years and thousands of dollars making a movie receive a monthly royalty check for $14.32. The gate didn't open. The gate just turned into an algorithm that lets you inside the building, locks you into the basement, and charges advertisers to look at you through a glass window.
Jesus Christ, now he's doing Al Pacino from Heat.
So now the theatrical truth, because while theatrical is still valuable, that is not because it is romantic. It is valuable because it creates signal where a theatrical release can create press, reviews, audience proof, social validation, premium pricing, later platform value, and a public record of demand. But theatrical is expensive, unforgiving, and exposes weaknesses fast. A weak theatrical release does not make a film look bigger due to it making the lack of audience visible. That is why We Want Theaters is not a strategy to pitch to anyone. The real difference between then and now, before streaming, was that distribution was a controlled ladder. A film moved from high value access to lower value access, and the system protected pricing after streaming distribution became fragmented access. A film can be everywhere and still have no economic force. The system rewards attention, not mere availability. Which now brings me to my personal experience with this, because it's fucking hilarious, and I will make no apologies for talking about it. So, how many producers does it take to make a film nobody distributes? And that is not a riddle. Last year, there was a slow build-up before someone decided to book a call with me 3 separate times. Out of those 3 calls, they ghosted me on 2 calls. Then they booked a 3rd call and finally showed up and pitched me a $2.5 million independent film executive produced by Seth MacFarlane and starring Jake Johnson. It was the typical kind of pitch I usually get, with a few household names attached that you would recognize. This person needed $300,000 immediately and urgently, based on their alleged friendship with Eric Charles at Sony and what they described as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and blah, 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 my ass.
Is that the biggest ass you've ever seen?
They always do. That's always the pitch. So what began as an understanding and a productive conversation ended with my role as a consultant being dismissed as not being how the industry works, which was especially ironic considering this person had followed and engaged with me for months knowing well how I operate. In any case, I said no, and I ended the call, and in my frustration, I publicly called this person out for their fraudulent behavior. Using my industry relations, I even reached out to Fuzzy Door, Seth MacFarlane's production company, and they outright said, and I quote, "Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We are not familiar with or affiliated in any way with Mr. Fuckface the Shithead." That name is not real, by the way. Did you know there are a handful of people walking this earth that literally will never need someone brokering financing on their behalf, and I can guarantee you Seth MacFarlane is one of those people? Which is where this goes next, because what followed was a harassment campaign, fake emails, late-night death threat messages, and sending me a picture of their own father laying comatose in a hospital bed just to score sympathy points, all while at the same time emailing me screenshots of people saying horrible things about me from people I had never met before.
What the hell is wrong with you people?
People with no connection to me whatsoever. One of those people, an employee at a company called Filmbridge International, a company that also deletes its own one-star reviews, said they wanted to literally kill me for calling out that type of behavior. Talk about batshit fucking crazy, because that is the toxicity of why investors don't take filmmakers seriously in any capacity, but especially independent producers. This went on for days to the point I actually had to get the police involved. So, then what followed was a year of silence until this person reached out to a business associate of mine asking questions about how rap consulting was operating without Section 181. So I went looking, and what would you know, I found the most on-brand thing I've ever seen come out of this industry. The film got pitched to me is real. It actually got made and even went to the AFM in November of 2025 with an article in Deadline. The film had a cast, but there was no Jake Johnson. There are 26 producers listed on IMDb. 1 line producer, 1 associate producer, 5 additional producer credits, and 19 executive producing credits. But none of them are Seth MacFarlane or Eric Charles. So the movie exists, and it's called Jacob Beats Up Nate. So this person had a real project and still chose to lie about what it was to shake me down for $300,000. Could things have changed over a short period of time? Yes, very much so. The film has talent, and I say that very loosely, having worked with a few of them myself. It got made without any sort of introduction or investment from me, but without the names sold to me, and on its own timeline. So the urgency was never real, and it usually never is when it comes to filmmaking.
You serious?
So again, this film went to AFM in November 2025. It is now June 2026 and there is still no distribution announced after 7 months. That is not to say a deal will not happen, because it could close tomorrow. But the unmissable opportunity I was supposed to fund immediately is sitting in a market right now waiting for someone to give a shit.
Bottom line, not gonna happen.
Not gonna happen! No, not gonna happen! Not gonna happen!
So no, distribution is not the final errand after production. Not anymore. If you're still following, understand this is not unique to this particular dogshit film. Most 2026 independent films will arrive or have already arrived in the market with credit lists like this one, and will still sit and wait, and will probably end up on Tubi or Redbox. If Redbox is even still a thing, right? In any case, this is what the producer title was supposed to identify in the right people responsible for getting the film made, sold, and distributed. What does that even mean? A credit crawl and an empty distribution slot are the same fact written twice. Investment shows up in 30 or more small pieces only when no buyers convinced an audience exists. And a film no buyers convinced about is a film that does not get distributed. The producer count is the distribution problem showing up much earlier. So, back to reality. Sundance took 16,000 submissions from 164 countries in 2026. 4,255 features, 11,480 shorts, and 470 episodic projects. It accepted 151 total, with 97 being features and episodics, plus 54 shorts. So you beat roughly 16,000 films to get in. Now, all that time later, only about 35% of that feature lineup actually has theatrical or streaming distribution as of this month. A24, Neon, Searchlight, Netflix, they all signed those deals. They exist. But more than half of the films that won the lottery still have no buyer. Slamdance runs 7,000 to 8,000 submissions a year and accepts about 115 films. Maybe 10 to 15% land traditional distribution, but the rest go on the Slamdance channel, which is this festival's own platform, which is the dressed up version of distributing yourself. South by Southwest pulls anywhere between 10 to 13,000 submissions and takes 110 to 130 features plus around 100 shorts. Maybe 20 to 30% of the features get independent or streaming distribution, as South by Southwest is usually just a launchpad for films that already arrived with a buyer attached.
Doesn't make any sense. Too bad.
Cannes is the only one where the number flips with 2,000 to 3,000 feature applications, 50 to 60 in official selection, and another 20 to 30 in director's fortnight and critics week. 75 to 90% of accepted films secure international theatrical distribution because every global sales agent alive is standing in the same place at that time. That is the whole answer. The festival is not the buyer anymore, and I have been saying this for the last 18 months. So distribution is not the name of the game. And what does that mean for filmmakers? Distribution is no longer the finish line. It is a test, and by the time a film reaches distribution, the market is asking, who is this for? Where are they? Can they be reached? Will they pay? Has anyone already proven they care? Why does this need to exist now? Why would a buyer spend against it? Why would a platform feature it? Why would theaters book it? Why would press cover it? If those answers are shit, distribution becomes just another storage solution. The cleanest, brutal truth is that while the old system could sometimes carry a film, the current system makes the film carry itself. That is the difference. The distributor is not your savior. The streamer is not your audience. The festival is not your release. The platform is not your demand. In 2026, a filmmaker has to build proof before a distributor gets involved. Without proof, the film may be listed somewhere, but nobody has any reason to care. That is the reality facing anyone trying to raise money for their first film. The investor is not hearing your pitch in some clean room. In fact, there is no room. And any grifter on LinkedIn or any other social platform is lying to you.
Are you fucking retarded? The hell's the matter with you?
Want me to be fucking retarded?
Investors in any category hearing it after years of inflated claims, fake attachments, dead urgency, padded producer lists, and a fantasy shooting timeline. They have been told the household name was real when it was not. They have seen 20 producers on a title and could not identify who had control over what. They have been told the investment was needed immediately, then waited and watched the same urgent projects sit around for months, even years. You may have done none of that, but you still inherit the damage. Every dishonest pitch that gets close enough to be considered makes the next legitimate filmmaker start behind, and that is the tax this industry puts on newcomers. Before an investor can believe in the film, they have to believe the filmmaker is not another person selling bullshit. That is why the release path cannot begin after the film is finished. By then, the filmmaker is usually out of money, out of patience, and out of options. Waiting for a distributor at that point turns the film into a distressed asset. So, here's the solution, and bear with me here. The release path has to be designed before launch. Specifically, the filmmaker needs control over where the film is first shown, who sees it early, which audience is targeted, which paid window comes first, how press and clips push people toward the film, when the film moves to lower priced or free with ad platforms, and which rights are kept or licensed. The first decision is the opening lane. That could be limited theatrical, event screenings, TVOD, direct rental, educational sales, community, screenings, a paid digital premiere, or a premium YouTube release. The lane has to match the film. Horror does not move like faith-based material. A documentary does not move like a comedy. A regional film does not move like a streamer thriller. Treating every film as if it needs the same release path is how filmmakers end up announcing availability instead of generating demand.
Not a great plan.
The first window is where the film earns attention or proves demand. That window needs protection because early free access can weaken later paid demand. The older release ladder moved from theaters to video, then paid TV or VOD, then free TV. That sequence is looser now, but sequencing still matters across theatrical, TVOD, SVOD, AVOD, and FAST. So the filmmaker has to decide where the film first asks people to pay attention or pay money. Dumping the title onto a platform is not a release. Then comes the work that most filmmakers avoid because it is not cinematic. The release list has to exist before launch. For a film, that list may include 50 genre writers or reviewers, 25 podcasts, 25 creators who cover that type of film, 20 local outlets if the film has a regional hook, 20 organizations if the subject has a community, 10 theater or event partners if live screenings matter, 5 to 10 platform or buyer contacts if outside licensing is realistic, and direct email capture from every screening, landing page, trailer push, push, and event. That list has to answer basic questions. Who is being contacted? What are they receiving? When do they receive it? What link are they pushing? What date matters? What action is being requested? This is where distribution begins. Not in a vague marketing sentence, and not in a poster mock-up, not in some "we have interest from platforms" bullshit fog machine. Paid access and free access also need to be separated before release starts. An event-first path could move from local screenings to TVOD rental, then AVOD or FAST, then library licensing. A digital-first path could move from trailer push to TVOD launch, then SVOD pitch, then AVOD or FAST later. A community-first documentary could move from paid screenings to institutional sales, then educational licensing, then TVOD, then AVOD. A horror or fandom-first path could move from genre creators to trailer reactions, then limited screenings, then TVOD, then Tubi or FAST later. AVOD can widen reach, but it often comes with lower revenue potential and less control than paid windows. LA Film School's 2025 Indie Distribution Guide describes AVOD as useful for broad exposure while also identifying lower revenue potential and limited control as drawbacks. So, going free too early is not harmless. It can help awareness, but it can also train the audience to wait. The release has to decide when free access helps the film and when it weakens the paid window. Rights also need the same discipline. Distribution rights are usually divided by territory, window, platform type, term length, exclusivity, revenue share, and reporting rights. Sundance Distribution Glossary describes distributors as acquiring exclusive rights to sell, license, or rent a film in specified markets including theatrical, home video, and TV. That is why "we will distribute your film" is not enough. The filmmaker needs to know which rights are being taken, which territory is covered, which window is included, how long the deals last, what spend is committed, what reporting is required, what gets recouped, and what release commitment exists. All rights, all media, worldwide, 15 years for a tiny upload is not opportunity. That is theft.
Well, how about that?
The release needs pressure. People need reason to watch during a specific window. That pressure can come from a one-night screening, a 7-day rental premiere, a director Q&A, a cast watch party, a creator reaction wave, a press embargo lifting during launch week, a local premiere tied to hometown coverage, a non-profit screening tour for an issue documentary, a convention premiere for fandom material, paid retargeting, or YouTube clips pushing viewers to TVOD.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
So without pressure, the film becomes another lonely thumbnail waiting for your mercy.
Well, how about that?
None of this makes distributors useless. It puts them in the correct place. A distributor is useful when they bring theater relationships, platform relationships, buyer access, press strength, marketing spend, reporting system, territory sales, release history, or genre-specific reach. They are not useful when they bring an upload, a logo, a vague shit promise, hidden fees, no release date, no spend, no reporting detail, and a long rights grab. The Film Collaborative notes that once a binding distribution contract is signed, release responsibility can shift away from the creator and back to the distributor. That is exactly why a filmmaker has to know what the distributor is doing before signing away control. And in 2026, the distributor should add force to a release path that already exists. If the filmmaker has no audience target, no first window, no list, no pressure, no rights discipline, and no paid access sequence, the distributor is walking into a cleanup job. And unfortunately, that is the problem, and most filmmakers only ever bring a finished problem and then ask someone else to make it valuable.
Not a great plan.
So now, here's a real example from a current client of mine. He came to me late last year with a horror genre project, and instead of treating distribution as something to figure out after, we built a package around the way this specific film could reach its audience, create paid demand, protect rights, and give investors a credible path back to recovery. The package is built. The audience has been identified and verified against creator-led comps with confirmed box office returns. Paid demand runs through a path that delivers recovery inside the first window rather than after a multi-year waterfall. The rights position keeps customer data direct to the production. A non-revenue floor sits underneath the recovery case and secures a portion of the budget before audience audience performance is counted at all. Which means the investor does not have to guess what distribution might mean later. They can see the comp benchmark, the revenue path, the recovery threshold, the rights position, and the floor underneath. They can see where recovery happens before the first profit split is even discussed. That is the part most indie packages avoid. They talk about where the film might go, but they do not show how the investment can come back.
Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
That is why the solution worked for this particular film. It was a specific path built around a specific film with the audience existing before the film does. What does that mean outside of a shitty LinkedIn post? It means there is public evidence that an audience of this type at this budget tier has already paid for and watched films through a specific route that does not require a festival or a known distributor. It really is that simple.
Well, how about that?
So, here are the lessons. The dynamics of crowdfunding. Ethan Malik at Wharton analyzed over 48,500 Kickstarter projects with combined funding of over $237 million and found that the size of the founder's pre-launch personal network ranked among the strongest predictors of a campaign's success, alongside the quality of the project itself. So bigger personal networks track directly with higher funding. Pre-launch audience already attached to the founder predicts post-launch revenue as reliably as the merit of the product being funded. Experimental study of inequality and unpredictability in an artificial cultural market. Princeton sociologist Matthew Salganik and Columbia's Duncan Watts ran controlled experiments on artificial music platforms with over 14,000 participants. Songs assigned higher initial download counts went on to dominate the platform regardless of independent quality assessments. Objectively equivalent songs without that initial social proof signal fell to the bottom. So, initial validating audience drives downstream adoption more reliably than product quality. The fusion of innovations. Everett Rogers established that 16% of any addressable market, with 2.5% being innovators and 13.5% being early adopters, validates new products for the remaining 84%. Products that successfully reach mainstream adoption cross through this early adopter cluster first. Products that bypass it show lower mainstream adoption rates across dozens of industries replicated for 60 years. What the research finds across pre-commitment markets is audience signals before and at launch predict revenue more reliably than credentials, access, or product quality alone. So if you're done confusing proximity with substance, build something that can survive inspection. That is the work at Wrap Consulting. What is your risk-adjusted project profile? Everything you have been sold about this process was built to keep you chasing access, validation, and hope. But it was never built to tell you the truth. Return that shit to its sender. If you like this video, thank you for watching. I invite you to please like, share, and subscribe. If you don't, thanks for watching anyways. I will see you next time.